Excellencies, dear Holocaust survivors, families of Holocaust survivors, friends, it is my pleasure to welcome you to the official opening of the exhibition, Yad Vashem, Book of Names of Holocaust Victims. I'm Melissa Fleming, and I'm the Undersecretary General for Global Communications here at the United Nations. In August 1942, Israel Lichtenstein wrote a note. The note said, "I only wish to be remembered. I wish my wife to be remembered, Gela Sechstein. I wish my little daughter to be remembered. Margalit is 20 months old today." Israel buried the note with those of two others in a small container. Many others buried notes, too, in milk urns and tin boxes in the hopes that they would be preserved and found someday if they did not survive. Each of these little containers contained a treasure, an archive that had been gathered in secret under the leadership of Emanuel Ringelblum, a historian who was also living in the Warsaw Ghetto. Thanks to his secret archive, we still hear Israel's plea today. It is the plea of millions, knowing that any day they could be murdered, to prove that they existed. It was also an act of courageous rebellion, as the Nazis' goal was not just to kill all Jews, but to remove any trace of their lives. Yad Vashem, the World Holocaust Remembrance Center, was established 75 years ago in 1953. One of its first initiatives was to create special forms to record the lives of those who did not survive the Holocaust. 3 years later, on the 14th of April, 1956, a Mr. Shlomo Lichtenstein, who lived in Tel Aviv, filled out 3 of these forms. Mr. Lichtenstein completed one for his son, Israel Lichtenstein, one for his daughter-in-law, Gela Sechstein, and one for his little granddaughter, Margarit. He recorded when and where they were born, the professions, where they had lived during the war, the place of death, and the reason. Thanks to this initiative, Israel is remembered. Israel's wife is remembered, and so is his little girl. Mr. Lichtenstein was not the only person to fill the forms. Called the Pages of Testimony, these forms have been completed by family members, survivors, and friends for over 70 years. They comprise the heart of the Yad Vashem's vast database of the victims of the Holocaust. And it is this database, along with the work of historians, that is reflected in the pages of the remarkable exhibition that you will be able to see, the Book of Names. We are honored to have Yad Vashem's Book of Names of Holocaust victims here at the United Nations. Over 4 million names, dates of birth, places of birth, and if known, places of death are written in black ink on white paper. The exhibition stands in silence, but it speaks volumes. It stands at the entrance of our United Nations as a reminder of our responsibility to counter anti-Semitism and every form of prejudice, violence, and hatred. We pause now for a special performance by Ms. Hadar Orshalimy and Mr. Yaniv Tobenhaus of Walk to Caesarea, a poem by Hannah Senesh.
Shalom.
That beautiful poem set to music was by the poet Hannah Senesh, who was born in Hungary in 1921. She emigrated to the then British Mandate Palestine. In March 1944, she was parachuted into former Yugoslavia on a mission to assist the Jews in occupied Europe. Arrested at the Hungarian border, Hannah was imprisoned and tortured, but refused to reveal the details of her mission. She was eventually executed by firing squad at the age of 23. But her poem lives on. Thank you both very much. It is now my honor to welcome Mr. Antonio Guterres, the United Nations Secretary General, to deliver his remarks.
Dear Holocaust survivors and dear families of Holocaust survivors, Ambassador Erdan, Mr. Dayan, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends. It is an honor to be with all of you. I will never forget my first visit to Yad Vashem many decades ago, and I was even more impressed when I saw the renovated and expanded museum complex that I visited as Secretary General. I want to thank Yad Vashem for bringing this deeply moving exhibition to the United Nations, which goes to the heart of your vital mission to give the millions who perished an everlasting name, a Yad Vashem. Among the first actions the Nazis took in their campaign of discrimination, exclusion, and ultimately annihilation of European Jews was to target names. In the 1930s, German Jews were forced to adopt an additional name. For men, it was Israel. For women, Sarah. And when a prisoner arrived in Auschwitz, their name was erased and replaced with a number burnt on the forearm. First robbed of their names, then of their lives. No cemeteries, no headstones, no traces remain. The 6 million Jewish children, men and women, are lost forever. But their memory and their names shall never be forgotten. This exhibition is a call to action. Some 1 million victims remain unidentified, and we are racing against time. It is a call to remembrance. As fewer and fewer can beat direct witness, we will have to find new ways to carry the torch of remembrance forward. within families and across generations, within classrooms and across geographies. And this exhibition is a call to reflection, to see in each child, woman and man who perished, a human being with hopes and dreams, not a faceless, nameless victim. And it is a call to all of us. Our world today is not immune to the poison of hate, the hate that says another person is less than my equal, less than human. Together, let us stem the tide of human cruelty and fight anti-Semitism and all forms of racism wherever and whenever it manifests itself. Let us forever keep the memory of the past alive and never let others forget either. Seeing this exhibition, I was reminded of the words of the poet Benjamin Fonda, who was murdered at Auschwitz, and who I would like to quote in closing. And I quote, "Remember only that I was innocent and just like you, mortal on that day. I too had a face marked by rage, by pity and joy. Quite simply, a human face." Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary General. Our next speaker is His Excellency, Mr. Gilad Erdan, the Permanent Representative of Israel to the United Nations.
Thank you, Under-Secretary General Fleming. And of course, I would like to thank Secretary General Gutierrez, my friend, Chairman of Yad Vashem, Dani Dayan, and of course, the Rubinstein family. Leaders, delegates, and dear Holocaust survivors, thank you all. My grandfather, Chaim, was a farmer. He lived in a small village in Transylvania with his wife, Bracha, and 8 beautiful children. But in the spring of 1944, the small village and their simple way of life ceased to exist. The Nazis brutally forced Chaim, Bracha, their 8 children, and 160,000 other Transylvanian Jews into cramped ghettos, and shortly afterwards onto cattle cars hurtling towards Auschwitz. When the trains came to a stop, my grandfather was immediately separated from his family, his young children torn from his arms and his wife dragged away from him. If only he would have known what was about to happen to them, he would have kissed each one of them for the last time and told them how much he loved them. Bracha and 7 of their children were sent straight to the gas chambers, murdered for the sole reason of being born Jewish. The Nazis kept my grandfather and his eldest daughter, my Aunt Hannah, alive for the sole purpose of doing backbreaking labor for their despicable regime. Friends, Bracha, Pearl, Tzvi, Sarah, Hodaya, Leah, Henya, and baby Mordechai, murdered at only 2 years old, are eternally enshrined in the book of names downstairs. Their names are inscribed alongside the names of nearly 5 million other Jewish men, women, and children murdered by the Nazis and their collaborators. Thanks to Yad Vashem, their memory will live on forever. But beyond their memory, the Book of Names, this powerful exhibition, couldn't have come at a more crucial time. Today, there are forces of evil doing everything in their power to erase the memory of Bracha, her children, and the 6 million other victims. Holocaust denial and distortion are on the rise, and due to the internet, these lies proliferate at terrifying speeds. This is why we passed a historic resolution 1 year ago to combat this twisted phenomenon, and the resolution was adopted by consensus. Thanks to this resolution, there is now a globally accepted definition for Holocaust denial and distortion. Nevertheless, social media platforms still remain a cesspool of lies and hate. This practice must end now. It isn't by chance that this year we witnessed so many instances of ignorance regarding the atrocities of the Holocaust and the event that led up to it. There are those that are working to erase the memory and lessons that must be learned from our horrific atrocity. They question the right of the Jewish people and the Jewish state to protect ourselves. Just today, we witnessed another example, one of thousands, of Israel defending itself against terrorists in Jenin, preparing to carry out an attack against innocent Jews. I expect the international community to stand behind the Jewish people defending ourselves in the Jewish state, as this is one of the most fundamental lessons learned from the Holocaust, the tragedy of the Jewish people. This is the embodiment of never again. The UN, an institution that rose from the ashes of the Holocaust, bears an integral central responsibility to actively combat these phenomena of anti-Semitism and Holocaust denial. It is the responsibility of each and every one of us to call out this hate. Hateful actions always begin with hateful words. The time has come for everyone to accept what the international community has agreed upon and start fighting this sick practice. Holocaust deniers and Jew haters can no longer be given a free pass. Sadly, even here at the UN, such bigots can be found. I know that I will not rest until this is done, but neither can anyone else. The time for words has passed, and the time for action is now. It is our responsibility to go on the offensive against bigotry and not rely solely on statements and verbal commitments. In a time of rising hate and violence, platitudes are not enough. I demand action. The Jewish people demand action. We must not allow evil to prevail. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador, and also for sharing your very personal testimony. I'd now like to ask our next speaker, Mr. Dani Dayan, who is the chairman of Yad Vashem, the World Holocaust Remembrance Center, to deliver his remarks.
Dear Holocaust survivors and their families, Secretary General Guterres, Ambassador Dan, Excellencies, honored dignitaries and friends. Nachman Skariton, birthplace Zhashkov, Ukraine, place of death Warkowicz, Poland. Aryeh Skariton, birthplace Zhashkov, Ukraine, place of death Warkowicz, Poland. Approximate date of death June 1942. Circumstances of death: two brothers caught by the Nazis and led to a pit where they were shot dead, together with the entire Jewish community of Warkowicz. I have just read out portions of pages of testimony regarding two Jews murdered during the Shoah from among the 2.7 million pages recorded at Yad Vashem in Jerusalem over the past 70 years. We have gathered authenticated records of an additional 2.1 million names of Jews murdered brutally and criminally during the Shoah by Nazi Germany and its collaborators, for whom no one has yet filled out pages of testimony. Altogether, over 4,800,000 names. Certainly, they are all worthy of remembrance, of reverence, which is, of course, why we are here today for this very special and memorable occasion. But the two names that I just read out to you, Aryeh and Nachman Skariton, and the story of their murder in Warkowicz is particularly meaningful to me. because they were my great-uncles, Nachman and Aryeh, the brothers of my grandmother Hannah, names that I grew up with, names that, as the Jewish tradition goes, are present in every single branch of my family, either as first or second name or middle name. Names I associate with pain, with sorrow, with longings, name with meaning, names that deserve and have received a Yad Vashem, the biblical Hebrew term for name and memorial. So when I searched with my very hands and eyes for my uncles' names and found them in Yad Vashem's original book of names at our Shoah exhibit in Auschwitz-Birkenau in June of last year, I knew that the deeply moving experience I had there of search for and discovery of the name of individual victims of the Shoah as part of a vast compilation of the many millions of my murdered fellow Jews was an experience that must be made possible for any person, anywhere, of any nation, community, or faith, who, like me, like you, seek to connect with the crucial, deeply significant story of the Shoah. This is why Yad Vashem, the World Holocaust Remembrance Center, together with the mission of the State of Israel to the United Nations, have brought this newly updated and authorized book of names here to the UN headquarters. And why my distinguished friend, Secretary General Guterres, decided graciously and insightfully to accept the proposal that I brought to him to inaugurate this new book of names here of all places, and now of all times, on the eve of the International Day of Commemoration in memory of the victims of the Holocaust. The Nazis and their collaborators, driven by maniacal hatred of Jews and anything they perceived as Jewish, sought to exterminate every Jew, everywhere, and to erase the memory of their identities and their culture. The psalmist foresaw that thousands of years ago. Amru, lechu v'nakchidem migoy, v'lo yizacher shem Israel od. They have said, come, let us destroy them as a nation, so that Israel's name is remembered no more. Tragically, we cannot revive even one of the millions that they murdered. But we can and do restore the names and the stories of the victims. We meticulously gather every possible shred of testimony about their lives and deaths, about their values, their aspirations, their achievements. And in a very different way, we painstakingly study the contexts and circumstances of the horrible processes and events in which their lives were violently stolen from them. We do this because the victims deserve no less, but also because we sense that by recording, studying, and teaching their names and stories, we are helping to prevent horrors that even remotely may resemble the Shoah. History never repeats itself exactly, but phenomena of extreme anti-Semitism and other forms of racial hatred, aggressive violence, corrupt dictatorships are recurring. To combat and overcome them, we can and must learn from the Shoah. And we start that by faithfully and accurately remembering its victims. That is why the Book of Names is here in the United Nations today, and why it is so significant. I wish to thank the benefactors and hosts, and appreciate the historical experts and creative designers that made this project possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dayan. We now welcome back Ms. Hadar Orshalimy and Mr. Yaniv Taubenhaus, who will perform Beautiful That Way. Beautiful That Way is a sung version of the theme from Roberto Benigni's film Life is Beautiful, which depicts a Jewish father who uses humor and imagination to shelter his little son from the reality of the horrors of the concentration camp to which they have been deported.
Smile without a reason why. Laugh as if you were a child. Smile no matter what they tell you. Don't listen to a word they say, 'cause life is beautiful that way. Tears, a tidal wave of tears. Light that slowly disappears. Wait before you close the curtain. There's still another game to play, and life is beautiful that way. In his eyes forevermore, I will always be as close as you remember from before. Now that you're out there on your own, remember what is real and what we dream is love alone. Keep the laughter in your eyes. Soon your long-awaited prize will forget about our sorrow and think about a brighter day, 'cause life is beautiful that way.
Thank you very much.